Ship in a Bottle, written by James Hooper, 1922. Early in the afternoon, a sudden cold fog from the sea had driven the motherless young lady from the garden where she'd been playing all alone. Going into the house, she had found him in the attic of the old abode, and they had been rummaging together for the best part of an hour. He downhearted, she twittering gaily among dust-heavy coffers and pieces of old furniture, when she found a little ship in a bottle. The bottle was an ordinary bottle of green glass, of narrow mouth, corked and sealed, and within it, miraculously, rode the little ship, with its tall, fine spars, its cabin, capstan, shrouds and tiny pulleys, complete in every detail, its topsails bellying to some mysterious, imprisoned breeze, while the other sails were furled. "Oh," she cried, "look at the little ship. Look at the little ship in the bottle. It has sails, it has masts, it has everything. Oh, where did you get the little ship in the bottle?" He took the object from her and examined it as she stood poised, eager and a little fearful that this new, enchanting, and already heart-tugging possession might be taken away from her. He peered within the green glass and could not remember. He knew that sailors, whiling away the hours of long traverses, wrought such toys, carved tall little ships, which in some way they managed to introduce within such glass containers, though mouths seemed ever too narrow to let them enter or ever let them out again. But he could not recall at first how this one had come to be among the discarded things in the attic. Then a ray pierced the fog of his mind and lit up the space of the past. "I remember, my beauty," he cried. "I remember. It was given to me long, long ago, when I was just a boy, my beauty." "Oh," she begged, standing on tiptoe, "tell me, tell me." "I had a boat all my own that summer," he said, "and all summer I had been sailing the bays and the roads." As he said these words, he could see himself clearly, as he had been when a boy. The supple muscles, the bronzed, smooth face, the shining hair, and a sort of desolate regret pinched his heart. There was a ship anchored out near the mouth of the bay, by which I often went, my beauty. It was a jolly ship. The crew all were tam-o'-shanters. They'd lean over the sides as I'd slide by and smile at me, from captain to carpenter. But I liked especially the young apprentice. He wore a red sash around his waist. When I passed, he took off his cap and waved it, and made me feel I was going ever so fast and splendidly. "It was the apprentice who gave you the bottle?" the young lady haphazard. "No, my beauty. It happened this way. One morning I put off in my boat, meaning to board the jolly ship, the Notre Dame de Nantes. That was its name. I had never boarded it, merely had slid along its sides as the crew nodded and the apprentice waved his tam. But this day I had a jar of good tobacco, and I was going to climb on deck and give it to the jolly crew. But I never did, my beauty. It was a strange day, with great wads of fog floating about the bay. I lost my bearings, and when I came to the spot where I thought the Notre Dame de Nantes was anchored, I sailed across and across the place where it should have been, and I could not find her. Then a current seized me and took me up against a dark ship, a great brute of a ship I had never noticed before, and I went up her sides to see if I could get my directions. There was only one man on deck, my beauty. On the whole deck, just one man. I remember him well. He was all crooked, a crooked nose, crooked teeth, and a crooked smile. There was something nasty in the way he answered my simple question about the Notre Dame de Nantes. The Notre Dame de Nantes, he smiled. She's not anchored anywhere about here. She's not anchored at all. The Notre Dame de Nantes. You'll never see the Notre Dame de Nantes. I remember I was nettled by the way he spoke. I'm sorry, she's sailed away, I said. There were nice people on her, courteous people, who answered courteous questions courteously. But he laughed and called back at me. To show you we're all polite on this boat, he said, I'm going to make you a present. He vanished down the companionway and was up again in a second. He smiled his crooked smile up at me and dangled this bottle before me till my hand reached for it. In spite of the gift, I was in a hurry to go, for somehow I couldn't like him, what with his crooked smile. So I was on shore before I looked over my new possession carefully. It was then that I saw that the little ship in the bottle was a miniature of the Notre Dame de Nantes. You see, Beauty, the dark ship and the Notre Dame must have been lying near each other on the roads, though I never noticed the dark one, and it was a small Notre Dame de Nantes, which that sailor of the crooked smile had whittled out for his bottle. Even the name, the young lady murmured, as she peered through the bottle's green glass. See there, on the stern, in tiny gold letters, Notre Dame de Nantes. And then what happened? And then, oh yes, my beauty, great trouble. That very night I found trouble at home. Great trouble. My father died. Then afterward came the rush of the goldfields, so that I never saw the Notre Dame de Nantes again, my beauty, nor the dark ship, nor this little model in a bottle. In that box it must have been, ever since my mother put it away, probably soon after I'd left home. In that box it must have been all these years. Oh, she cried, how lonely and dark they must have felt. Who? Why, who, my beauty? The crew, the captain, and the crew, the carpenter, and the apprentice. He paused, and then, not knowing just what might be in her mind, thought it well to explain, but they're not in the boat, my beauty. You understand that, don't you? The sailor with the crooked smile, he carved only the ship and the things on it, the small boat, the capstan, but he did not make any people. Look carefully, see, there are no people. They're down in the cabin having dinner, she said with a shining smile. And oh, please give me the little ship. Please, so it can be my own. An obscure reluctance was in his heart, but he could find no reason for it, and so, finding no reason, he gave her the little ship in the bottle. Days followed, which found him immersed once more in the sombre abstraction of his bereavement. The existence of the young lady grew far and dim. Then the insistence of her prattling began to pierce the mournful haze about him, and stirred his tenderness. It was of the little ship that she spoke so constantly. Cursador was very angry last night. He roared and roared with his big voice. He had all the crew on deck, in the dark. He made them furl the sails 5 times. Who is Cursador, my beauty? Don't you know? She sighed. Why, he's the captain, of course. Captain of the Notre Dame de Nantes. Captain Cursador. With his big whiskers and big voice. You should have seen the crew scampering about, pretending they were afraid and winking at each other all the time, knowing he would never hurt them. And Michael played, slipped and fell, as if out of a big hurry, and then went about limping. He would limp when the captain was looking, and then laugh when the captain wasn't. Who is Michael? He's the carpenter. Don't you remember? He has freckles and dimples, and when he smiles, his mouth opens from ear to ear. He tells me stories, beautiful stories. One is of a city that sank long ago and is now deep beneath the sea. Once a year, when the moon is bright, it rises slowly to the top, all its bells ringing, and all the people in their finest clothes walking about. They stroll about all night in the moonlight, all the bells ringing, and then at dawn the city sinks back slowly through the clear waters, and the bells sound fainter and fainter, till finally they cease, and the beautiful city sits once more at the bottom of the sea. But the one I love, the dearest one, that's Ives Marie. He's the apprentice. He wears a red sash and a blue tam o' shanter, but he never speaks. He just looks at me, so gently and sadly, just looks and looks, as though after a while maybe I'll understand what he means and can't say. Oh, he's so cute and gentle and so sad. He grew a little disturbed by all of this. She seemed so feverishly absorbed in a new toy. Her little mind turned and turned about it so restlessly that he grew a little afraid. "My beauty," he said, "I don't want you to play so much with the little ship in the bottle. I want you to run and romp. If you play too much with the little ship, I shall have to take it away from you." She smiled up at him. "Oh, please don't take it away. I'll be good. You'll see. I'll play with it only a little bit for a while every day." But now he awakened every morning with a sense of having been dimly stirred in his sleep. His room opened on the patio of the old abode, and the young ladies also opened onto this court, with its murmuring fountain. One night he found himself sitting up, wide awake. A great golden band of light passed athwart his bed. Looking across the patio, along the path of this light, to his beauty's chamber, he saw its casement brilliantly aglow. Startled, his heart a pound, he rose, and a little dizzy with sleep, and with the cold of the night he went across to her, but halfway he stopped, reassured. He could hear her speaking in a sweet, swift way, and in her voice there was no plaint and no pain. Then, as he listened, a new fear gradually took the place of that which had been quieted. She was babbling so fast, so feverishly and so earnestly, and not as if in sleep or to herself. It was as if she were speaking to people, to several in turn. She was as one conversing with fairies thus in the middle of the night. Striding forward, he pushed open the door and entered to an abrupt ceasing of her bird-like twittering. For a moment his heart hurt him at the sight of her innocent dismay. In a white nightgown, her hair loose about her head, she turned upon him wide, dilated eyes, and her hands, in an unconscious gesture, pressed against her palpitative heart. But he had seen her throw, with a quick movement as he came in, a scarf across an object over which she had been bending, and he stiffened himself to severity. "Beauty, beauty, what in the world are you doing up thus in the middle of the night?" Her attitude of fear relaxed to one of sweet trust, and she smiled the little smile reserved especially for him. Her hand snatched away the scarf. "I've been playing with my little ship," she said confidently. She was now peering through the glass into the bottle. "Oh," she cried with mock annoyance, "what a noise you made in the night. You've scared them all down below, and they were all up on deck, and I was having such a good time with them. Captain Cursador, and Michael, and the crew, and Ives Marie. They won't come up again tonight. You frightened them." "Beauty," he said, "I'm going to take the little ship away from you." A premonition of disaster, of one of those sudden and indefensible disasters which fall upon one from the capricious and stubborn gods with which they must live, trembled through her small being. "Oh, please, please don't take it away from me." "I must take it, Beauty. In the daytime, I will let you have it sometimes." She was begging so prettily, with an attitude of supplication so eloquent. It was hard to go by. It was hard to go on. But he braced himself. "You can have it sometimes in the daytime. At night, though, it must be in my room every night." She stopped begging abruptly, and it was with a profound gaze from a still little body that she watched him take her treasure, and with it depart. A look that haunted him as he crossed the court, and in relentment almost sent him back. He gained his bed and laid the bottle on the table beside his pillow. After a moment, the light, which had been flowing across the court, went out. "She'll forget," he said to himself, uncomfortably. "She'll forget easily, she'll forget." The following night, asleep with the little ship on the table close by his head, he dreamed. He dreamed that he had been awakened by the sound of clanging, capstan, and running chains, of tugging ropes, shouts, bellying of sails, and that, sitting up on his elbows, looking through the glass of the bottle, he saw the little ship, all sails set, butting and butting to get out. It was a recurrent dream. The next night he dreamed it again. Propped on his elbows, he was looking within the bottle, and the little ship, all sails set, was butting and butting to get out, recoiling each time from the collision with the bottle's narrow neck, only to charge once more in a stubborn effort to escape. But the third night the dream changed. He heard in his sleep the turmoil of the little ship's endeavour. He dreamt that he woke then, and, leaning over, looked into the bottle. But this time, under his eyes, the little ship was no longer striving, listing to port, sails hanging and aback, small rudder loose. It seemed to have given up, and from there came to him, somehow, mute speech, a silent passion, which drew down his head and his eyes closer to more careful scrutiny, and peering close thus through the green glass, he saw the apprentice, Yves Marie. The little fellow was kneeling on the hard deck. His clasped hands and pale face were raised to the observer, and he was begging from his very heart to his core. The pity that now stirred the dreamer as he slept had such a twisting force that it awakened him. He found himself awake, lying on his back, his eyes shut. But in a moment, even with his eyes shut, he knew that he was not in darkness. Light was beating against his lids. A sense of presence completed his alarm. Someone was in the room. Someone was there, close to him. With an effort, he opened his eyes. "Beauty," he cried, astonished. She was standing by the bed, holding a light above his head. She was looking attentively into the bottle. "Shh!" She hissed at him gently, and remained peering, her face attentive, tender, and grave. He would have scolded, had he not been altogether held by the sweet seriousness of her abstraction. And then, before he could seize hold of himself, go to sleep," she said softly, as a mother speaks to a child. "Shh, there, go back to sleep," and was gone. For a moment, her light filtered into the room, then became fainter, went out, and the house was once more silent and dark. As he lay, wondering if really he had seen, really he had heard. But the next day she came to him, eager with secret enterprise. "Please walk down to the sea with me. It's a long time since you have walked with me. Please drop your work and walk with me this afternoon." So they went out, hand in hand, across the moors, towards the sea. She walked fast, her skirts billowing to a following wind, and they reached the cliff above the sea before he noticed that under her cape she carried the small ship in a bottle. "I'm going to let them go," she answered to his glance. "Oh, they're not happy in the bottle. They're not happy. They yearn and grieve. They want to set out freely to the wide sea. They beg to get out. They beg me so. Yves Marie kneels to me and begs and begs. I must let them go." The fear which had already touched him several times laid again its cold hand on his heart. But as he stood pondering upon the mystery and on the strange communication which had come between them, wondering whether it was his dream which had gone to her, or her dream which had dwelled within him in the night. She, darting to the edge of the cliff and peering below, was already at her plan. Look, it's too deep here, it's too deep. His hand seized by hers. Looking down at her command, he saw at the foot of the cliff a deep blue pool. It rose slowly at the sigh of the sea, and then fell slowly, as far in its depths, across a green and bubbly duskiness. Long weeds waved their arms instinctively. See, she said, there it's too deep. The ship would still be in a bottle. How terrible to be upon the sea and still be in a prison in a bottle. Come, quick, we must hurry. The fog is coming in. The fog stood out at sea like a wall, solid and motionless. But they, familiar with the land, knew that, immobile as it looked, it was rushing towards the coast in a silent, muffled charge. Even as she spoke, a faint advance vapour slid over the pool, dimming it. Come quick, let's find another place before the fog comes in. She darted to another edge of the cliff, looked down, and was off again. Finally she stopped, and when having reached her, he bent his head down by her curls. He found her content. This is a good place. This is just the place. Below, as he looked, the sea, drawing in its breath, left the view of a rock the colour of red brocade, then swirled over it again in lacy emerald chaos. See, this is just right, her small voice called in the turmoil. She rose upright, the bottle pressed against her, torn by the last hesitation, then, with a strange, brilliant smile, tossed it out over the cliff. Looking downwards, he saw that she had timed her moment perfectly. As the bottle fell, whirling, the sea uncovered the rock. Then, just as the bottle, striking, flew into many shivers, the sea, returning, seized and raised the freed little ship and tossed it high on a wide, smooth surge. She uttered a cry, and he, stirred almost as she, answered it. The little Notre Dame de Nantes, gallantly, all sail set, on a slant with the wind, was making for the open. At times, in the swirl of the retreating sea, it slid towards its free goal, then again backed up. It roared with high spirits, almost amid the rattling pebbles at the foot of the cliffs, and the cliffs, to its smallness, looked like stupendous cliffs of the moon, and the waves like catastrophic tidal waves. The two, now stretched face down above, looked on breathlessly. It's gaining, she cried. With a fast, silent swoop, the fog now pounced down upon them and enveloped them. Straining his eyes in the white smother, he could see nothing, but to her, so it seemed as he watched her, glimpses were being given still. She pressed at her heart. She breathed fast. How piercing her eyes, he thought. Her hands stretched before her, as though between them she was guiding the small ship. Then slowly they parted at an encompassing, wider and wider stance. And then, when they were as wide as they could be, turning to him, she flung her arms around his neck and buried her face and whispered, "Thank you, thank you, thank you." But as they were crossing a flowery field on their way back, she threw herself down, and there, amid the cowslips and the blue-eyed grass, wept long, as if her heart were breaking. And then the next day, thinking over all of this, moved with self-reproach at having left her so much alone, he decided to take her on a diverting trip to the big city. On the return, which was not long after, for the heart of both, of the sudden grown man and the young lady, tugged for the home by the sea. they found Maria, the housekeeper, in a fever of news to tell. While they were gone, a ship had come to the small port 3 miles to the north, which for so many years had been empty of all craft. "Oh, my lady, and you too, sir, you have returned just too late, or you would have seen yourself the wonderful happenings. It was a strange vessel, everyone agreed, and a strange crew that spoke in an unrecognizable manner, so that might as well have been deaf and dumb in this land. And my lady, if you had been here this morning, you would have seen they came here. I did not know anything about them at the time, nothing about the coming of the ship, and here was the patio full of these strange men, some of them with rings in their ears, standing, smiling and smiling, turning their heads this way and that, and I so astonished it was some moments before I started to send them about their business. But when I did, they did not move nor answer, merely stood, smiling and smiling. Then one, bolder, went to the door of the lady's room, which was open to the sun, curtains flying, and before I could stop them, they were all there, standing at the door, peering in turn, and nodding and smiling, letting their eyes travel over every blessed thing in the lady's room, and then looking at each other, nodding and smiling. Never people that seemed so much at home, and even when I had them begone at last, walking away down the road, one came running back. It was the youngest, and guess what he wanted? To leave a little flower he had plucked. I have it here, my lady, all pressed for you. She had been listening with her hands against her heart. She took her small dried flower as it fluttered like a butterfly from a big book, then turned to him and said, "Oh, please come with me to the cliffs. Come quickly with me to the cliffs." "Beauty," he chided, "after such a trip, you are tired? Please come with me, please." There was in her voice such a pang of desire that he obeyed. Side by side, they were soon speeding over the moor. She walked fast, headed down against the breeze. He saw that she was making north for the headland of the Wolves, which curved around the small port 3 miles away. With the breeze, the fog was coming from the sea. Dewy pearls formed on the pale gold of her hair. The fog, when they had reached the headland and soon poised on its extremity, was like a white night. He could see nothing of the sea, which he knew was stretched ahead, which he knew beat beneath their feet. He watched her, who by his side, very still, seemed tense to some strange vigil. Suddenly, so near as to startle, a desolate blur sounded in the mist. The sound of a bell followed, and a spar creaked. An invisible craft was passing there, close by in the mist. She inclined her head, her eyes without straining, but rather dreamily searched the fog. He watched her strange excitement. What does she see? What does she see? He thought. How piercing are her eyes. Again the horn sadly sounded, and the unseen bell tolled. This time nearer still. A ship was passing in the white smother, passing fast. A third time the horn sounded, and the bell, and as if she now saw, as if most clearly she saw in this fluid density so impenetrable to his eyes, she stretched full height, smiling a sweet, wild smile, and waved her hand. Again the horn sadly sounded, and the unseen bell tolled. This time nearer still. A ship was passing. A ship was passing in the white smother, passing fast. A third time the horn sounded, and the bell, and as if she now saw, as if most clearly she saw in this fluid density, so impenetrable to his eyes. She stretched full height, smiling a sweet white smile, and waved her hand. The horn sounded once more, this time far, and the vibrance of the bell came once more, faintly. And this was the last time. They stood a moment side by side, immobile in the muffled silence. She turned to him in the way of one owing an explanation. "It was Ives Marie," she said simply. "Beauty?" he chided, but she seemed not to understand him. He was waving his hand. "I knew he would be there to bid me goodbye. He's coming back to me when he's a big ship captain." He felt reality slipping away from him, and eager to question, yet felt himself held back by something within, by an invincible scruple, by something like an awe. The dreams of the young are sacred, he thought, pure and sacred, and the old, such as I, with hardened minds, must enter only on tiptoe, or far rather not enter at all, but stand on the threshold, yearning but afraid. And so he asked nothing, and after a little while the two, hand in hand, walked back across the downs towards the light of home.